Hey, Master Coach G here on Thriving After 50, Mind, Body, Soul, and want to continue the conversation about how our emotional health affects our physical health. Yes, it actually does affect our physical health. Just like your physical health is important, your emotional health is equally as important for your overall health. That means that if your physical health is in jeopardy, you go and take action, which means you go to the doctor, you look stuff up online, whatever your source is, but you take action. It's equally as important for us to take action when it comes to our emotional health. If you find your emotions are on top of you, so to speak, then let me assure you that taking care of some of those core needs, and I'm going to give you 3 of the pillars, which is enough sleep, keeping a healthy diet, and regular exercise. Those 3 pillars are essential to maintaining a balance of physical and emotional health. Okay, it's a mind-body connection, and that's why it's important. Here's one of the things I want you to know that you will hear in this episode is that I'm going to share 8 characteristic traits that you may be dealing with some unhealthy emotions. So once I share these traits, I want you to kind of jot them down or remember them and look at them, and maybe you can identify with one of the 8 traits or maybe more. But if that's the case, then that means that, you know what, you might want to kind of take a look at that, do an assessment, and then start to put something in place to minimize that. So join me in this episode on Thriving After 50, Mind, Body, Soul, as we continue our conversation about our emotional health. This is Master Coach G, and I'll see you on the next level. Master Coach G here on Thriving After 50, Mind, Body, Soul. Thank you for joining me on today's episode where I am continuing to talk about our emotional health and how it affects our physical health. Well, I know that it's not something that we talk about, but I know that whenever I start to coach or, talk to people about their health overall, I usually start with the mindset because there is where it all starts. So let's just talk about why emotional health is important. First of all, let's talk about what emotional health looks like. Emotionally healthy people typically are in control of their thoughts, their feelings, and their actions, and they can cope with life challenges, and they bounce back really quick from setbacks. Now, please understand that being emotionally healthy does not mean that we are never sad, angry, or frustrated. It doesn't mean that. Emotionally healthy yes, you will experience those emotions from time to time. It doesn't mean that it's a way of life. It just means that when you are emotionally healthy, you are aware that you're sad. You are aware that you're angry. You are aware that you're frustrated. So that is the difference between being emotionally healthy and not so emotionally healthy. Not so emotionally healthy is when you don't identify those emotions. Or you haven't taken the time to evaluate those emotions, where they come from and all that stuff. And we're going to talk about all that too. But having a healthy emotional state is a key part to really having resilience and the self-awareness. And, it goes back to the 3 A's, the awareness. So when you have that self-awareness, you have a sense of well-being, because our overall emotions play a role on how we interact with others. And it also helps, when we get feedback or criticism from other people, it kind of helps us to be able to guide that information, to be able to process it, if you will. So we have to be able to observe and interpret our emotions. I think that's really important for us to be able to do that. And that's why the awareness is so important. Because when we do that on our part, then we have a better chance of not being misunderstood as well. So that's the other part of that. Now, having the skill to maintain good emotional health is the key, okay? Because you want to thrive in life. And in order to do that, you want to be able to have the keys to be able to utilize when it's needed, to be able to manage the unhealthy stage or steps or season, if you will, when it comes to our emotional health. Because here's the thing, we are bound to face something in our personal lives. But when we're faced with it, we want to be able to manage that in a positive way and not in a negative way. Because we're going to, the thoughts is what creates the emotions. So please understand that our thoughts create our emotions. And that's why later on in future segments, I'm going to be talking about how to reframe your thoughts and things of that nature. But we want to be able to have the ability to have the skill to be able to manage both the positive and the negative emotions. That's the key right there, is to be able to manage the emotions. Emotional health is a big contributor to overall mental health. I believe, and this is just me, I don't have any statistics, I don't have any data, I don't have any, proof of this, but in my opinion, I believe that before we get to having mental health issues, I believe that we have emotional health issues. And I think that if we deal with our emotional health, then we are more than likely to reduce the risk of mental health issues. That's just my opinion. Again, I don't have any data on that. I don't have any research. I just believe that getting our emotional health in check keeps our mental health in check. Maybe we can do a little bit more research on that, but I just do believe that. Here's the thing. When it comes to our emotions, especially our thoughts, we either process information or we express the emotion. So emotional health is about the well-being and being able to manage our emotions, especially things that have an impact on us and the people around us. Okay, so for example, let me use this for example. And I've never experienced this, but maybe someone has, and I'm sure probably more people than I'm aware of. Okay, for example, so let's say you have a company and the company is downsizing and they start calling people in to give them their pink slips, and so of course, you get a pink slip, you're going to have all these different emotions. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? My bills are going to be due. I got to find another job. It's like, how am I feed my kids? And, tuition is due, and, mortgage is due, and lights is due, so all this stuff is going through your mind. The thought is starting to create these emotions inside of you. So a lot of people will feel that because that's the thought process, okay? So what they're doing is they are processing the information and they are also expressing that emotionally as well. So then you have some people who have just going through to get their pink slip, and they are saying to themselves, well, okay, I have 2 weeks. Let me see what I can come up with. Let me check my bank account. Let me, let my spouse know what's about to happen so we can make some shifts and some things. I got to hit the pavement hard. Let me start looking online, or whatever the case may be. You take a completely different route. Okay. So the person who is upset and just all over the place, they just willy-nilly with their thoughts. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. How I'm going to feed my kids. How I'm going to pay the mortgage. All these thoughts are going through their minds, which is causing them to have worry and anxiety, which they don't need. But some people can react out of those emotions, okay? Which means they could either go off, and just bad behavior, which could be displayed publicly, or it could be displayed against the boss or the person who gave them the bad news, or their spouse or their children, all because of their emotional state. So, but you have the other person who goes home and talk to their spouse and talk to the kids and say, hey, you know what? I got notice that I'm going to be off work in 2 weeks, so we're gonna have to tighten our belts a little bit. This involves everybody, so here's what here's the plan. Anybody want to throw anything into the ring, and so we can kind of discuss what it is that we're going to do as a family and go from there. That is a person who is responding versus reacting to their and then it's the thought process that they're also taking as well. They do have the emotions of thinking about what's going to happen. However, they decided to use that in a positive way so that everyone that's involved, because it's not just us as an individual, it's us and our families and our spouse and our, So someone with good emotional health may have the same feelings. However, they recognize and acknowledge. They go the A, one of the 3 A's. They acknowledge that this can be stressful. They acknowledge that they can be upset. They acknowledge that they got to come up with a plan. They acknowledge that, they have to shift some things. But they're acknowledging those things, keeping things into perspective versus things just kind of spiraling out of control. Okay? So that's the difference. So it's what you tell yourself. So what are you saying to yourself? That's what's creating the emotions. So if you're upset, then you're creating that. You're creating that. If you're angry, you're creating that. And I'm not saying that's always the case, but I'm just saying, because you can look at it from another perspective. See, neither of these examples has anything to do with the person. It's understanding the process of the facts of the timeline. See, one person is saying, well, okay, I have 2 weeks. The other person is just not understanding. It's like, okay, well, yeah, dude, you got 2 weeks. But that's not a part of their thought process. So that's the reason why we have to understand that our thoughts create our emotions, okay? So I want to give you 8 signs that you may be struggling somewhere with your emotional health. And I want you to know that stress is a normal part of life, and unfortunately, it's not going to go away. It's going to happen to all of us from time to time. However, having the keys, having the tools, having the techniques to be able to handle when you have stressful moments, that's the key. And, not being aware and acknowledging, we got to be able to acknowledge what it is, so that we can get a better handle on our emotions. So if you're experiencing any of these signs, then you may be struggling with some emotional issues, okay? If you feel drained all the time and you have less energy than usual, okay? Either you sleep too much or you sleep too little. Your performance at work is suffering. Taking care of your personal hygiene feels like it's too much. It just feels like, oh my God, I got to get up. That kind of thing. That's what that means. You find yourself eating too much or too little. That's a part of the emotional thing. It's like an emotional roller coaster. It's like 1 minute you feel great and you're doing good, and then it's like, then you just kind of find yourself overindulging. You often feel anxious and irritated with pretty much everybody. It's like whoever's breathing around you. No, seriously, it's like, please just don't even breathe in my direction. Just anxious and just really irritated with everything. You have physical symptoms of stress like high blood pressure, heart palpitations. Your confidence and self-esteem is definitely affected. Okay. So here are some characteristic traits of an emotional healthy person. Okay. They are self-aware. They're self-aware of their emotions. They're self-aware of their thought process. And they understand that their thought process is creating the emotions and that they're behaving, and that's where it's coming from. Okay, so there's a couple of things that we have to examine, and we're going to dig a little bit deeper than that. But being self-aware with the ability to look at your own actions, basically kind of like stepping outside of yourself. It's like stepping outside of yourself and seeing yourself, and that is like an awesome experience. I don't know if any of you all have ever experienced that, but it is awesome. Just being able to step back and look at it from a whole totally different perspective. Okay. Agility, having emotional agility. Agility is similar to cognitive agility, which refers to an individual's ability to deal with emotions and the discomfort that comes with it. That's what agility is being able to deal with the emotions and the discomfort. Because here's the thing, there's some emotions that we can think about, and it can be painful, when you think about it. And you can tell when you start to feel your heart may start racing, or you'll just it'll just be something. You will know it if it happens to you. But and that's that discomfort. Okay, so emotionally, people usually take advantage of the skill of knowing how to draw on the inside of their feelings, and they use that to align themselves and adapt with the thought and the emotion. Okay, so here's the thing. If a thought creates the emotion, then what you have to do is you have to reframe the thought. Okay, because once you reframe the thought, it's going to reframe the emotion. Okay, because the thought is directly tied to the emotion. So if you have an event that happened to you, and anything can trigger that. People say, "Oh, this is deja vu," but it's actually you're just kind of reliving that thought. I mean, you smell what you smelled at the time, you hear what you heard at the time, you basically see it. It's almost like reliving that moment again because of the emotions. I mean, it can just be so overpowering to the point where it, depends on the emotion, whether it's happy or sad. It could even cause you to even cry. So it just depends on the emotion. But we really have to be aware of our emotions. And then once we see that thought is creating a certain emotion, then what you have to do is pretty much like detach from that thought. Basically just erase that thought and just say, it's almost like playing a record. I don't know if most of you might be, well, if you're over 50, you remember LPs and 45s, and you put it on the record player and you make sure that no dust was on the needle, no dust was on the record because you wanted to play. But basically what you have to do in this case is you have to scratch the record. You have to scratch the record so that you don't continue to have the thoughts that's creating the bad emotion. So once you have scratched the record, then you replace it with something else that will give you, like soothing thoughts, happy thoughts. And then you're replacing the negative emotion with something positive. And that's how you shift your thoughts to shift your emotions. Because we're going to have things that's going to come up in our lives, but it's basically a positive coping mechanism to be able to use with shifting the thought to help shift the emotions. But you get, and that takes practice. It really does. You have to practice that, having healthy emotions, because it's not something that we just have, Some of the ways that we can practice that through, acquiring the skill is practicing meditation and relaxation techniques. It's like getting into a nice quiet place and, do some deep breathing, in and out, and just kind of meditating, releasing a lot of the stress of the day, just relaxing your mind and your body. Another thing that you could do is spend some time with friends to be able to share, those emotional thoughts that you may be struggling with. Somebody that you have confidence in that is gonna, be able to help you through that time, even if it's just to listen because you may not know exactly which direction you need to go, but just to have somebody to listen to. to you. Find some time for hobbies too, or go for a walk. Do something that's meaningful. Do something that's rewarding for you, so that way you can practice some healthy coping mechanisms and skills. Those things help put you in a positive mindset. Live with a purpose and find those things that mean something to you. Those are the things that help you to manage your emotions, because we're all going to be faced with emotional moments. But healthy people tend to successfully have a strategy where they can rely on to help them through those times and get through the struggles. Because we all have to be able to identify what that is, because it's like a trigger, it's like a trigger in a gun. And we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about some techniques that we can use to be able to identify unwanted emotions, where we can make it easier to be able to manage those things, and how we can achieve good emotional health by cultivating a positive mindset. Because when you find that you have a positive mindset, regardless of what the circumstances are, you always find the good in it. And so we have to cultivate that. So we have to practice a positive mindset, following daily habits, the positive habits, and being aware of the ones that aren't positive or the unwanted habits that we don't want to deal with. We have to be aware of those as well. I would say do something, show yourself some gratitude, show gratitude and yourself gratitude for at least 21 days in a row. Say something good about yourself, say something good about, the world, or just say something good for 21 days in a row, just so you can kind of feed your mind some positive affirmations. And I would say, start to do a little physical activity, like maybe walking for a few minutes a day, meditation, definitely some deep breathing. Carry out some type of act of kindness. That's always a good thing. That always helps us to feel better about ourselves. So, and if you like to journal, then journal about positive things that help you through the day. Just small things like that will help you to have good, positive, emotional energy, because our emotions starts with our thoughts. So if we have positive thoughts, then we're going to have positive emotions. So see how it's all kind of connected there together. So so we need to dedicate ourselves to being aware and acknowledging and adjusting to a positive mindset, so that we can have a positive emotional state, because it does affect our health. If you are going through something emotionally and you're up late at night, that is not helping you. If you are going through something emotionally and you're overeating, that's not helping you. If you are going through something emotionally and you are disconnecting, that is not helping you. So that is why it is important for us to be aware of our emotional health, because we start negative patterns that is difficult to get out of. And here's the thing, we may not always know or recognize that we're having these issues, but that's why it's good to talk to people, whether it's some type of mental health professional, counselor, therapist, coach, whatever. Sometimes it's just good to speak to someone about that. So, to be able to manage or better manage our emotions. And again, please understand that our emotions are created by our thoughts. Okay? They are created from our thoughts. And learning how to better manage our thoughts, and that allows us to better manage our emotions and our feelings and our behavior, all that stuff together, because it is a mind-body connection. Hey, that's what I have for you today. I hope this episode has added value to your life. Thank you for joining me here on Thriving After 50, Mind, Body, Soul. If this podcast has been a benefit to you, please, please, please subscribe to my channel. Follow me so you can get the alerts whenever I drop something new. Share it with someone because it may be of help and a benefit to them as well. Hey, I appreciate you listening today. And remember, knowledge applied is power. This is Master Coach G, and I will see you on the next level.